It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening from FedEx Field? It's the Instant Reaction Show. Logan Paulsen there, Craig Hoffman here, live with you on YouTube at the Team 980 and at 106.7 The Fan. And we've done two shows here this year, Logan.
Yes.
And after both of them, there have been 38 points on the scoreboard for the other team. This was a very different game, I think, for the Commanders than the loss against the Bills. That one, obviously, a pretty offensive debacle, 38-3. You look at the defense and the 38 they gave up, and we go, well, that's a lot because the offense really didn't give them much of a chance. Today's a bit of a different story. 38-31, offense is in it, some key plays we'll get to, but I think we should start is, like, how did this defense go, back from a team that played really well the last couple of weeks against Atlanta, bend but didn't break, Giants pretty dominant throughout much of the game, to giving up 38 to a much better football team, but 38's a big number.
Yeah, I think the thing that sticks out to me about it is, like, when they play good quarterbacks, you see this kind of offensive production from them. When you see elite wide receivers coupled with elite quarterbacks, you're going to see this kind of production. So in the pregame show, this is kind of what I was expecting, honestly. Like, I knew there was going to be chunks to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. All I was hoping was that they were going to be able to manage kind of the explosive element of this offense from a mental mistake standpoint. So when you look at the touchdown to Devontae Smith late, where there's obviously some type of miscommunication in the back end, that's the stuff that you got to avoid, because I think you saw kind of when they have to go on these long drives, they don't do it all the time, but they'll turn the football over, right? You got two fumbles, which is great, able to kind of get out of a bad situation, especially down here in the red zone. So this is kind of what I was expecting. I thought the defensive line played a little bit better than I was expecting, honestly. I thought they did a great job stopping the run. I thought they were more active in terms of rushing the passer. They ended up with 2 sacks today. I thought they flushed him quite a bit. I think the other thing that sticks out is just how good that offensive line is and how dynamic Jalen Hurts is, like, outside the pocket as a thrower, in terms of extending plays. And when he breaks contain, how hard that is on the back end to manage. So I know people are going to crucify the defense, and some of that's warranted 100%. But this is kind of what, I don't know, when a team has Jalen Hurts, when they have A.J. Brown, who right now is playing like a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL.
Right now he's playing like a top 1 receiver in the NFL. He's got 6 straight games of 125 or more.
He's playing good football for sure. So this is, again, you just got to manage his damage. And for him to get 130, 9 for 130, that's kind of what you're hoping for at this point. And it's the other mistakes that I think hurt you more, the coverage bust specifically, and that's tough. That's tough football.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is there's only so many weeks in a row for me that you can just go like, hey, they're in great position. Like, eventually and I don't know what the solution is other than in the offseason, like, do you look to get different players that if the problem is the same and they're always in position and they don't have the ball skills, like, what is it, a technique thing with how they're teaching the catch point? Is it the players themselves? Like, I don't know. It's tough. And, you draft Emmanuel Forbes because he's got the ball skills, and there he is in one-on-one situations again, getting burned by A.J. Brown. And, like, that's not me, like, assigning blame or trying to be mean to anybody. It's just, like, eventually someone's got to make a play. You can't keep being in the picture, like I said in the pregame, on the wrong end of the poster. Right. Eventually, like, go make your own poster. And we talked to Kendall Fuller afterwards in the locker room, and he made a good point that often, as a DB, and you made this point pregame too, like, you make a play as a DB, you get the pass breakup, no one really remembers it unless it's a pick. But today it would have been nice because a lot of those wound up being the touchdowns, and then obviously you have the coverage bust on top of it. Yeah,
and I think that's a hard thing to say, is because I think, like, if I was a coach and if I was coaching defense, I'd be like, this is what I want. You're in the right position, and it's just about finishing. And A.J. Brown is one of the better finishers in football at the moment, and you got to kind of deal with that. I think, again, I go back to the things that are within the control of the team. It's the coverage bus, right? And everyone says that 38's a big number. It is a big number, but there's an interception late, kind of giving you that ball inside the 20. Then they go for it on 4th down inside the 20. That leads to 14 points. And that's really unfair to the defense to kind of assign those points to them. But, you bring up the fumbles.
Right. They also did have a fumble on the tush push, which is like a 95% play. So it kind of evens out.
And they did some stuff schematically with the tush push that I thought was good, that I thought made it challenging for them to kind of be successful in that situation. So obviously I think you see, that their solution in terms of stopping the tush push led to the touchdown late in terms of a different schematic execution of the tush push with the pitch to Swift for the touchdown. So, yes, defensively they got beat up, but honestly, when you're playing this defense, this Philly defense, like this was my expectation. Unless you could consistently kind of disrupt Jalen Hurts and consistently disrupt their game flow, like this is who they are. Like you could give them adversity, you could make them punt. But the one thing I love about watching the Eagles is that they always are pretty even keel, right? It's never, they were down early, and there was never like, oh my gosh, we got to change who we are. It's like, we're going to run the football, we're going to manage this, we're going to find our explosive play here, we're going to make plays when we have to, and that's what they did. And it is, it's like watching a snake eat a mouse a little bit. It's like they got you, and you feel like you're in a good position, but they just slowly kind of asphyxiate you and leads to a bad deal there.
So you said the D-line you thought actually played pretty well.
Better than the first matchup, I thought.
Okay, I'm curious what happens when we go back and watch the tape, because I think also, this might be the kind of thing where in the moment we almost have a better feel for it than when you watch the tape and you kind of strip away some of the emotional context of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in big spots, some of the times where these DBs get beat down the field, there are some big plays where there's just not any pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is Del Rio as a play caller didn't seem to want to heat Hurts up, didn't want to bring extra blitzers unless I missed something. But it also seemed like a strategic decision in some of those spots because of exactly what you said. Hurts is so good at getting out of the pocket. He runs around, he makes plays, even banged up. He clearly didn't want to run today, but he did make throws on the run.
Sure.
They kind of mush rushed. And it's like, oh, let's just keep him in the pocket. And you watch a guy like Chase Young even just kind of play patty cake with Jordan Mailata and be ready in case Hurts tries to get out. And Hurts, to his credit, is patient enough to sit back there. And, there's the big, I think it was a 4th down to Devontae Smith, where he's probably got like 4.5 seconds to throw. And you're just like in that spot, whether you generate it from bringing extra guys, you simulate something, or your front four wins. Like there's some key spots in the game where I feel like the D-line left something to be desired.
Yeah, and I go thinking back on it, I think this is where it's helpful to go back and watch the game. I felt like they brought a couple of pressures early. They were in man coverage situations, bringing one extra in the rush, and they got burned. The one that I remember was Benjamin St-Juste on, I think it was a 3rd and 7. A.J. Brown's running an out, kind of gets beat, ends up being like a 20-yard gain. That'll get you out of stuff that you want to do. And I think when you look at you mentioned the mush rush, the way the offensive line, specifically the tackles set, is they're inviting a bull. They want you to bull them so they can kind of clamp you down and sit you in this position.
And that's just because those two guys are so good.
They're very good.
Like Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson can absorb pretty much any bull rush in the league.
100%. And I think, Mailata's, when you're, 400 pounds, 415, like that's a good way to set. Like that's advisable. And you have the feet to do it, like get it done. So I think there's a little bit of that going on there. It's stylistically, that's who they want to be. But also, like that's who they are. That's like their trump card. You watch them against any team. And that's how they win, right? They set well enough. Jalen Hurts pats the ball back there. We talked about how long he takes to throw the football, and that's what happens. Guys get open down the field, and one of the things the Jets did is they were very consistent with their pressure, and they were okay, honestly, with getting burned a little bit because it was going to generate this pressure. And I felt like Jack got out of it a little bit later in the game, and rightly or wrongly, I thought they did a good job flushing him off the spot better than they did the first time they played. But, again, you got to complete some of those plays. So it kind of goes in line with what you're saying with the DBs. Like, yes, you were more effective in terms of generating pressure this game, which is important, obviously. But I think the other thing is, like, you got to finish some of that stuff. And you end up with 2 sacks, which is one more than you had last time. And a lot of pressures where he's off the spot, throwing the ball away, all that kind of stuff. Great. But, got to finish that stuff, and you got to finish in the back end. And really, I think that's probably what I would say, outside a couple mental mistakes, are the defining adjective of the game, the defining verb of the game for the defense is just got to finish better,
Yeah, which is tough, but that's the difference in the league. Like I think I had this conversation with multiple people today, friends texting whatever about the game, and it's like good teams make plays, mediocre teams make some plays, bad teams don't make any. And this team was kind of in the middle, and the Eagles are really good, and they made a lot more plays.
They're very talented.
You're right there. It's 5 to 10 plays where do you actually make the play and finish it? And they did. A.J. Brown, finisher. And on the receiving end of those is St-Juste, Forbes, whatever.
And Jalen Hurts is a finisher too. I think that's the other thing is, like, when you look back, like we were doing the post-game show, I was talking with B. Mitch and Brian, the host of the show, and the thing that comes out is when you watch the film back, I bet you kind of feel like, man, this isn't that bad outside of 6 plays offensively, 6 plays defensively. But and those games are so frustrating because as a coach, as a player, like, man, we are this close. But that team, because they're so good, they get those opportunities.
But that's the thing is like
Yeah.
you play that game 10 times and the same team makes those plays
100%.
7, 8 times.
100%.
And that's where I think teams get in trouble is they convince themselves that they're so close. And
Yep.
then realistically, it's like, no, that would happen again the next time
Yeah.
because that's who that team is who's played in the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, and I think like that's how they win games. Like they've had some ugly games, and we talked about this on the podcast, on the pregame show. One of the things that is definitive about that group is they can beat you in multiple ways. They never get outside their comfort zone. The defense is that's not a great defense, I don't think. I think the defensive line's good, but in the back end leaves something to be desired at this point. And they are just methodical. They're okay. Oh, we gave them a point. Like, we'll batten down. We'll get a 3 and out here. And they kind of pick. It's not like they're picking their spots, but they make enough plays offensively and defensively. And the offense can just be a juggernaut at times. Like, oh, we'll run the ball. Oh, we got the tush. We got these explosive plays. We got all this team speed. We got the tight end late on that 3rd down. Like, they have so many weapons and so many different ways to take advantage of you defensively that it's challenging. And like you said, they're compiled of a bunch of guys who know how to finish. And we haven't talked about the offensive line, but that offensive line to me are some of the best finishers in football. Like they can pass protect like nobody's business. And again, it's just the whole roster top to bottom is kind of built that way. So
Anything else on the defense before we flip over?
I mean, I think it's just frustrating because it's kind of one of those things where like this is kind of what you expect and you knew it was going to be tough for them, but you kind of hope that they keep them to 28 points. I think is what I was hoping here is it'd be 28 to whatever. I think 14 was my prediction in the pregame, 30 or 28 points, and that the offense is able to make enough plays to get you there. And it was so close for that happening today. And I think that's the thing that's frustrating is I think this was my expectation, and I thought they did a good job, not good enough, a good job in some spots. But then we talked about those, I don't know, what, 6-7 plays where you're like.
I mean, the thing is, St. Juice knocks one out, Forbes knocks one out. Like we're talking about a different game.
Yeah.
But as we were saying, like. That's why they're them.
That's why they do their thing.
And that's why the Commanders are currently where they are at 3 and 5. All right, let's talk about the offense, and then there's a couple key coaching decisions that are tough for Rivera, and we can talk through them, including one that I think they have a very legitimate gripe on in terms of the incompletion of Jahan Dotson. But obviously, to me, there's a couple key plays in this game where they look to Terry, and one of them, like. I don't know if you saw how open Curtis Samuel was on that 4th down. The first one where Slay basically drops a pick 6.
Oh, yeah.
And it's bad luck. Like, I'm going to be very clear. This is not criticizing Sam Howell for making a bad decision. You get up there pre-snap. You get the look you want. It's a key situation. Go to 17. No complaints. It just so happens that the Eagles totally busted coverage. And if he sees that out of the corner of his eye,
bunch the other way, right?
on that right side, Curtis Samuel screaming towards the goalpost, I could have thrown that ball. You could have thrown that ball. Sam Howell definitely could have thrown that ball if he's not looking one-on-one to Terry McLaurin. Unfortunately, he does look to Terry, and it seems like it's a bit of a bad ball, too far inside. Yeah. Obviously, later in the game, Terry's got the 2 that Terry would tell you they're drops. Sam would tell you they're bad balls. I would say they're both right.
Right. I think those plays are tough. I think you mentioned the incompletion, the almost pick 6 on 4th down. I think generally the lack of efficiency on 4th down was pretty disruptive to their process. I mean, they were 0 for 3 today. Yeah. That's basically 3 turnovers in my mind. Like they were pretty fastidious with the football. Thought they ran the ball fairly effectively. They pass protected fairly effectively. They gave Sam opportunities. We talked about that in the pregame show. There were times where they're showing pressure looks. He's checking his screen. I thought that all that stuff was laid in there very nicely. Execution was high. Jahan made some tough catches. Logan Thomas's touchdown was excellent. There's all these things, but then you look at those 3 third downs. The 2 drops at the end really are the ones that just are like flashing red because you design a play, the protection's good, the ball's there. And I, again, like as a receiver, I'm like, that's a catch that you probably got to make there. I know it's not the easiest catch in the whole world, but you got to make your quarterback right. The second one is tough because I think Sam, it's a bad miss.
He's wide open.
It's a bad miss, and I think
Sam said as much after the game.
I think Terry could have, made him right there also. But again, like the first one I felt like, man, Terry, like help your boy out. The second one I was like, Sam, man, let's get him back on track here. And so those are the plays. And we talked about defensively how there's 5 plays, 6 plays that you're kind of looking, man, I wish we could have those back. Offensively, it's kind of the same thing. There's not like, it wasn't like, oh man, they gave up all these sacks. It wasn't like, oh, they gave up all these pressures. Oh, they were inefficient on 3rd down. Or are they inefficient in the red zone? No, they did all of those things well. I think when I go back and watch this film offensively and I pull my clips for the show, I'm going to be like, this is
the best game of the year.
This is a good offensive performance. And it comes down to those 3 plays. And I do feel like this is, not to put it all on Sam, but there's a little bit of youth here. Like the moment felt like when they came out on the field, and it might have just been my vantage point, I just felt like there was a little bit of tension. and that you never see from Philadelphia, or you haven't seen from Philadelphia since Jalen Hurts was a second-year starter or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think there was a little bit of tension. You saw that in some of those balls that he threw, and it makes me think back to Kirk Cousins when he got his early starts, playing good, efficient football, but not quite finishing the way he needed to. And I think this is part of the growing process with a young player. And I know that's not what fans want to hear. They want to hear something more demonstrative, but ultimately that's what I think it comes down to.
Totally. No, I mean, sometimes I think people forget, like, it's a process. And when we tell you it's a process, it's real easy in the off season to accept that. And then you get in the middle of the process and it's just frustrating because you're looking at the game right in front of you. And this is a game where some of that happens. I mean, he is so good for 85% of the snaps today.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, the bad ones are like some of the most important snaps of the game.
The interception.
The interception's not that. I think that's going to be one that you look at on tape and you go, just hit Logan on the shallow, keep it moving, and you're good. Bad ball, bad decision, and it comes in a bad spot.
Yeah.
Obviously the first sack of the game, like that's, Wiley pretty good all day.
Yeah.
Has the bad one there. The bad rep, but that's what happens when you get in a 4th and 5 and the other team knows what's coming.
Yeah.
But the reason I mentioned the plays with Terry, and I'm glad you said some of the other stuff you did as well too, is it felt like the process was a lot better today.
Yeah.
And
we thought it would be though.
Yeah.
Because this matchup feels better for them.
For sure. And I guess it's the frustrating part of it is like you see the success and you're like, there was nothing stopping you from doing some of this stuff in the other games. Like I think the thing that's frustrating for me watching it as an analyst is when I went to training camp, this is the offense I saw. And this is why like so many people who were there and cover this team and know what we're looking at, were like, I think this offense is going to be pretty good. Yeah. Like if Sam doesn't completely muck it up, like this offense is going to be pretty good. And even today with the game he played, if they make a couple of those plays defensively, it's enough to win the football game. They scored 31 points. And I don't really understand why it took till week 8 to get the screen game this involved. Because while they didn't have any massive plays in the screen game, they did get a couple first downs, and it clearly had a larger effect on the Eagles' pass rush and kind of made them defend every blade of grass in a way that opened up space for other stuff. And so I don't know. I'm talking in circles, but like I think it's frustrating to see this level of success when it seems like it should have been the obvious thing all along, And
I think that's really hard for fans and people, like, as a play caller, one of the things that I've noticed, working with the people that I work with is that you think this is it. You think this is your identity. And then you get into the season, you get into actual bullets, you get into kind of their understanding and execution of the offense, and you realize that's not actually how I want to do this. And you have a vision, and you're like, I need to change. And you change it, and that doesn't really work. And you change it again, that doesn't really work. And it takes a couple iterations, and it takes a couple, quite frankly, like getting your teeth knocked in to kind of figure it out. And I think last week, the stuff against the Giants, some of the stuff they did here in terms of checking to some of the screens, I really like that they gave him more. And you could tell that maybe earlier in the season they were a little bit conservative, a little bit worried about what Sam can handle from a pressure standpoint, from a, directing the protection type stuff. But today you could tell he was in it, and I felt like it made the offense much more dynamic. It's something that Sam Howell does in Kansas City. It's something that good offenses do. And so maybe it just took an experience like that to say, hey, actually, we need him to do that. We need him to get to this point because the offense needs to blossom a little bit more. And I think that's kind of what you saw. And this is again gonna sound crazy, but you need those teeth. You need those teeth like bloodied and kicked in sometimes to come to that conclusion. And I know that's not what fans want to hear because your coaches are literally, it's like right in front of their face. They can't see anything. And so when something terrible happens, it's like, like we actually need this feature badly. So let's make it happen. And then you push that harder, you coach it harder. And I think this is the result. So credit to the staff. Again, like it's hard to kind of say, like, even with Kyle. When Kyle came in here, it wasn't the offense that it was in 2012 or 2013. Right. It grew up and changed a lot. So I think that's something that's important for people to understand. I know it's frustrating. I'm frustrated by it too. But it's part of new offense with a new quarterback and a new play caller.
Yeah, it's just like the margin of winning and losing is how fast you do it.
100%.
And I think that's the frustration is like some of this stuff has seemed like it's been needed for weeks, and like the trend has been wrong. And like,
well, sorry to cut you off, but I think like one of the things that's tough is you go terrible to good, to good, and so you kind of talk yourself out of being, oh well, like if we just do this. We just do the good more often, we'll be okay. And it stops you from making dramatic change. And then obviously you get that game against the Giants where it's like, nah, like we need some more overhauls, some more innovation there. And I think that's what you saw. So while that is frustrating, and I'm with you and I'm with the fans that are frustrated, I think this was a very positive step for the offense and a very positive step for Sam. Like, he looked awesome today.
He did.
The offense in general looked awesome. And I know they didn't win, but golly, man, they did some really impressive things. And I think that's the thing that's really frustrating about the day, is that when they needed it most, which is, about 8 minutes left in the game, just kind of got sidetracked a little bit, and you saw the team's immaturity.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I'm sort of trying to find my phone with my notes from the locker room, and I don't know where it went. One of the things that I remember distinctly from the locker room that I'm curious your thoughts on, Jahan Dotson, and this, we talked about how sometimes players don't seem to really think before they speak. They just kind of
say stuff,
answer the question flippantly. This is one that I think Jahan Dotson has been thinking about for a while. He talked about how the team will flinch in big moments. That there's just these moments in these games where he seems like the best teams don't flinch, and we flinch. And he talked about one of the key third downs they didn't get and some of these other big moments. What do you make of that?
I think that's pretty spot on, without being overly critical of anybody on the team. And that's hard. That's a hard culture to build. But I think you got a really, really nice juxtaposition point today with the Eagles. Like, holy cow, man. Talk about a team that doesn't flinch. The moment's never too big. 4th and 4. I mean, you could tell, I was shaking in my boots watching. I'm not even a fan of the Eagles. And Jalen Hurts just looks cool as a cucumber and delivers the ball in a way that only he can. And there are times in the game where, I think about, the incompletions to Terry. There's tension there. In the quarterback, there's tension in the receiver, there's tension in the offense, and it leads to a negative result. And I think I agree with that. And that, to me, is something that is learned. It's learned. Like, B-Mitch says this all the time, Nick, you have to learn how to win. I'm sure you've heard that saying before.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that. It takes time for teams to kind of develop that winning mentality, and I think that's something that stuck out to me today. There were moments, I agree with Jahan, that you're kind of like, why so tight there? Why, even from a play calling standpoint, you're like, why so conservative there, or why so whatever? And I think there's a little bit of that. People are trying to figure out who they are and how to win football games, and that's not easy.
No, it's not. So that was definitely one of the more interesting things. Terry obviously said what you think Terry would said. I think it was interesting after John Allen said what he said last week. John was not in the locker room as the media got in there, so he decided to say nothing this week. Not much to report either from Montez or Chase. Both of those guys were sitting together and kind of getting ready, did their media scrums, asked about the trade deadline. Same thing they've been saying all week. So nothing much to really report on that front. The last kind of big thing that I think we should talk about real quick is the coaching decisions from Ron Rivera to not challenge the 4th down to Devontae Smith when the Eagles run up to the line. It looked like on the replays that was incomplete.
4th down to Devontae Smith. Can you remind me of this?
Late in the game. That's the one that he had forever in the pocket.
Yeah.
And the Eagles kind of rush up. Ron said after the game, I was waiting for a replay on the big screen, didn't get one. I was waiting for something in my ear, no one told me. But to me, when the other team runs up to the line of scrimmage, that's probably a good indicator that you should take a look at it. And it's a 4th down, so it's a massive point in the game. I have a lot more sympathy, empathy, shared frustration with Rivera on the Commanders' 4th down situation or third down situation where Jahan Dotson looks like he has a catch. They call it a catch on the field. Darius Slay goes down hurt. In that time, New York comes in and is like, hey, actually, you didn't catch it. They overrule it, and then Ron challenges it, and then they go call on the field stands. Well, if they keep the original call and it's a call stand situations, that's a 1st down for the Commanders. It wasn't overturned. There wasn't overwhelming evidence. I do think it's an interesting choice by Ron if New York's already looked at it to challenge it again. But I also thought he was right, so I don't know what to make of that. But to me, the big mistake, the one that you're going, damn man, that's really tough, is the Devontae Smith.
Well, interesting, up here in the press box, the guys were talking about that, and they were talking about how they were waiting for a replay on their phone, or I don't remember what it was, but it basically came 2 plays after. Yeah. So, and I know there's a process that most teams have with regards to executing that challenge. You kind of wait for the replay, you wait for the indicator, because the head coach has a lot going on, and obviously if it took them that long to get the replay, they probably didn't get a replay until it was way late. So that's part of one of the things that people say is an advantage of playing at at your home field, is that they get the replay up really quick. Apparently they didn't have it, and so The
Eagles did a good job. The Eagles went quick, and that's what you're taught to do in that situation.
Did he not catch it? I didn't see the replay.
Replay said he didn't catch it.
Oh wow, bummer.
So yeah,
because they scored on that drive, right?
Yeah, they sure did. 2 plays later, that was the coverage bus. So that's a killer. And I don't know, man. It's just like another kind of decision making in the moment thing. And some of this is bad luck too, right? Like if Slay doesn't get hurt, the Commanders able to get up on the ball, get another play? Does it go to the 2-minute warning? Do they get kind of screwed by the timing anyway? It just seems like Washington is always on the wrong end of those types of things, and I'm sure fans feel that way. There's a couple of penalty calls in the game where people think, oh, we got screwed on that. It's the nature of it. It's the league. They tend to even out overall, but today some big ones. It seemed like every phase that could, things went the right way for Philly. Shout out to Joey Sly.
Huge field goal.
One phase of the game that they got well. Gigantic bazooka like just Joey Sly. Team record, 61 yards.
I was going to say he had it from probably 70. That thing was well within the uprights.
I think the previous record you might have been on the field for.
Gano, yeah.
Yeah, Graham Gano, 2011, 59-yarder. Anything else from the game?
No, just, we feel your frustration as fans, and it's tough, but I think there was a lot of positive things offensively, at least, to take away from this game, and hopefully it's not a regression next week. It's, they're playing the Patriots. Bill Belichick's going to throw all sorts of craziness at you, but hopefully it continues to ascend, and they continue to develop, and they continue to mature, and hopefully the defense finds something here in the next couple of weeks.
I kind of hate this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway to wrap up, because, what do you do to make sure that you don't go down again? But, is there anything? You just prepare the way you need to prepare, and you go out and play and hope for the best.
I mean, that's what you do, and hope the game plan's excellent. I think that's the other one I would kind of point to is the game plan. Like this game plan, they had a really good feel for what the Eagles were going to do. And so can you anticipate what Bill Belichick's going to do to put Sam in a good position to be successful, have those check-with-me packages, get him an understanding of the protections, all those things. Super, super critical. And so to me, it's, yes, preparing at a high level, but also making sure that the game plan is where it needs to be. And I think if it is, you'll see a similar performance. It might not look exactly like this in terms of stats, but I think you'll see a very comparable offensive efficiency.
All right, tape review podcast. We'll tape it Tuesday. It'll be out Wednesday morning. Might even come out Tuesday night on YouTube, so make sure you're subscribed at 1067 The Fan for full episodes. I also post clips on my page at Craig Hoffman here on YouTube. If you're listening to this later as a podcast, subscribe if you haven't already. The Take Command podcast out 3 times weekly from Logan and myself. For Logan Paulson, I'm Craig Hoffman. Thanks for listening and watching to Take Command, and I'll see you all tomorrow on the radio on the Team 980 at 4.